welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic, stroke survivor, and I am disabled, even though I don't look like it. And that's what we talk about here is these invisible illnesses that can be so crippling sometimes. And what I want to talk about today is how the living a happy and fulfilling life, working the program and focusing on ourselves, we can create a ripple effect and naturally influence others. So I want to talk about the difference between trying to influence others and living a life as an influencer, focusing inward so that it just naturally ripples outward. And I'll share a few personal examples about how my recovery has impacted those around me. So, this is one of the really cool things about recovery that I didn't really anticipate. By focusing on my own healing and growth, I have, over the past 8 years, been able to positively influence those around me. I've learned how to live happily, and it feels natural to want to share it with other people. Today, I actively try to share, obviously, because I'm doing this podcast, but even in my own day-to-day life, I think everything that comes out of my mouth has some sort of influence from my recovery program, because it's really taught me how to live. And I think that even when I'm not trying to share my experience, strength, and hope, it just naturally happens. And by constantly rising above these challenges that I'm facing, I'm showing others that it's possible. And if you remember a couple days ago, I talked about rising above just meaning doing the next right thing, even when it's hard, even when we don't want to. When I stopped drinking and worked the steps of my program, I began to slowly, ever so slowly, see changes in my life. And it really was all about consistency in order for those small, itty bitty, whittle tiny changes to become significant, to gradually become significant changes in my life. In the beginning, I was broken. I was so broken. It seems like another lifetime. It really does. It seems like that was not me. I mean, I have all the memories of it that I can remember because I was drinking, but it just seems like just a lifetime, a different lifetime. And I was broke, because I was spending all of my money on alcohol. I didn't know how to live. I was struggling to find myself, really. Before I quit drinking, I thought that was me. When I quit drinking, it was like, where is me? I thought that me was in that box of Vela Chardonnay, but I committed to recovery the second time. Second time I went to detox, that is, but it was probably a zillion times that I tried to stop drinking. And being committed to recovery, what for me meant that I turned off my wanter. That's what I call it. Because if I didn't do that, I would drink because that's what I wanted to do. There was nothing in me that wanted to get sober. Even when I was looking in the mirror and just saw my lifeless eyes, I still didn't want to quit drinking. I just knew that I had to in order to survive, in order to take care of my kids. Um, and as I turned off my wanter and just kept doing the next right thing, rising above. Rising above makes it sound so grandiose and stuff, but it's really just doing the next right thing, even though you don't want to. And as I did that, like slowly over time, things just started to fall into place. I began to see who I am. I began to see the pieces of me that I was as a little girl, like those pieces of me that I knew, but they never matured because I started drinking and I never grew. And then concentrating on my own journey, um, began to have a ripple effect without me even knowing it, and impacting those around me, specifically my kids, I think, just from observing me. But it then started to occur with my brother and sister. I started to see my conversations with them changed the way that they were. Um, I saw them, and I know I know my sister listens. I don't think my brother does, but if you do, hi. But I felt like when I got sober, after being sober for a few years, maybe like 5 years. We didn't talk much because he was moving around and stuff, but I saw them starting to come to me for advice. That was bizarre. It really was. It was bizarre. Like they were calling me to ask me what I thought about things. And I was like, I mean, that never happened. And because I was always someone who felt like I needed to be taken care of, because I never grew up. Um, when I was drinking, I was trying so hard to be that person, to be able to influence others. I wanted people to see things my way. I wanted to make big waves at work. I wanted to be an impactful conversationalist. I wanted to be able to influence my brother, my sister, like impress my mom and dad. And I wanted to make tons of money for my work. And yet all along, I also wanted validation for my choices. And it was living blind and completely irrational. It didn't make sense. What was happening in my head for what I wanted to happen and what I was asking for, it was contradictory. It didn't make any sense. It was exhausting and it was obviously not effective. I was not only not influencing others, but I was um, influencing them to pull away from me. I remember one neighbor of mine actually said to me that she didn't want to hang out with me because I was a bad influence on her children. And I was really hurt by her saying that. It wasn't, I mean, I suppose at the time when I was drinking, I was hurt, and thought, well, she could have told me this way or that way. But really, she was brave. she was brave to stand up to me for her family and her children. I mean, I wasn't doing anything other than probably just constantly drinking around her. So I can understand that that was just not somebody you'd want around. And I did feel hurt, but that was not her intention to hurt me. It was, she was protecting herself from and her kids from being around somebody who was an alcoholic. And I didn't know it. I didn't know it back then that I was an alcoholic quite yet. I think that was right before I started realizing what was happening. So um in recovery, I began to live authentically. You know, after you put down the drink, something remarkable happens. If you work the steps and you focus on looking at your character defects and wanting, you know, being committed to change and growth, it can't help but ripple out around you. People see you reacting differently, responding differently to in conversations, in different situations, under certain circumstances. And so I became an influencer without even trying. I wasn't focused outwardly on being an influencer. I was focused on becoming on my own well-being. And by starting to embody these principles of my program, I was really leading by example, and I naturally began to inspire people around me. And that sounds cocky, but I'm not trying to be cocky. I have people, it came as obvious in so many ways. Like there were people that were starting to come to me for advice, and there were people commending me on the way I was living and impressed and stuff like that. You know, by no means is it cocky. It's more like confidence. It's more like conviction. So the difference between trying to influence others and living life as an influencer, um, I think is trying to influence others is about persuasion and control. And it's an external effort to change other people's mind, to change other people, right? And I know in my program I can't change people, places, and things. So I can't change somebody else's mind or behavior. And I even it's in sobriety at the job that I was just at that I had to leave because of my disability. I read some book, listened to some books about persuasion, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I mean, it's for me, it's just it's manipulation. It's how do you be a salesperson? That's what it is. But it's necessary in your career, I think. So that's why I was listening to the books, and I learned a lot because I wanted to learn how to communicate with executives better. I wanted to be able, it really all came down to I wanted to be able to sell my ideas. And it's probably something I will always take with me everywhere because even in recovery, as I work on writing this book, as I work on this podcast, and I'm growing a social media network and that kind of thing, it's always something that I guess I strive to do is be able to um, be an influencer, right? But really, it's this episode is a reminder to me that the more I try, the less I'm going to influence. Like, I need to make sure that I'm living the life of an influencer, right? I'm embodying the values and principles that I believe in. And if I just communicate what those values and principles are, um, and I'm having that internal transformation, it just radiates outward and it attracts others through my own authenticity and my genuine happiness because my program works for me. And, uh, as I work my sobriety program and apply it to my stroke recovery as well. So, I wanted to give you some examples of how I feel like my by focusing on myself, how that has influenced those around me. Just a couple examples. And I've already mentioned like my family relationships. I don't know if I feel like they've obviously noticed as well. So I just can share from my perspective. Um, they have seen changes in me. They've all communicated it to me, all of them. And they've, I remember I've had some of them, I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but tell me that I have inspired them. And that is the most, gosh, I don't even know a big enough word for it. It just filled me up to have somebody in my family, several of them actually, tell me that I have inspired them. Um, Expressing admiration for my dedication, for my resilience. I feel so much closer to my siblings than I ever have. Um, I feel like my alcoholism, my disease created a gap between me and my siblings. And they may have not realized it. I don't know, but I did. I was so caught up on being sad all the time that they left me, that I was left behind as the little sister and stuff. But that's not really what happened. What happened was I stopped growing. I just started drinking and stopped growing. And they started living. And I felt like I was a victim and I was left behind. But really, I was an alcoholic and I needed help. Um, there were other people that in my life that were very controlling. Um, and when I got sober, after about a year or so, it might have even been a couple years, the controlling people, I'm laughing because it's really just one person, stopped trying to control me. I feel like the person felt like I was living in a way that had a foundation that could no longer be shaken. I could no longer be uprooted from my purpose and my conviction. I could no longer be controlled because I was just rock hard, solid in my program. And it's fascinating actually, because I think it was conveyed outwardly before I believed it inwardly. But it happened. It happened on its own. It's not like I had to go back and be like, you know, you can't do this to me anymore, anything like that. I just started living in this really dedicated way. And I was consistent. Consistency goes a long way. And I feel like that consistency is what impacted my relationships with my family. And my kids. Wow. I mean, we've always had really, really strong relationships. I think more than anything, um, with my kids, I think I'm leading by example. That when things get tough, um, you do the next right thing. You adapt. My daughter made a podcast series for me for Christmas. And one of the episodes, she interviewed my son and his girlfriend. And in it, she asked him if there's one word to describe mom, what would it be? And he said adapts, like adaptable or whatever. That no matter what challenge I face, I adapt. Whatever whatever struggles happen, I adapt. And that was so um heartwarming to hear that that's the kind of example that I'm living for them, because that's so important to be able to show them, not tell them how to live, but to show them. So I'm really proud of myself, really, and that's good to take a moment and recognize when you're proud of yourself for having a positive influence on your loved ones. My friendships. I think my friendships have changed so much since I got sober. I don't really hang out with a lot of the people that I was hanging out with when I was drinking. I think everybody, I don't think I hang out with anybody I was hanging out with when I was drinking. There's one person who didn't know that I was an alcoholic, a coworker of mine. And when I got out of detox, she really was just right there for me, and and always has been, really. I need to call her. But this is the one that I started running with and doing hot yoga with and stuff like that. And I think she was there right in the early phases, because she was in my department. So I think she saw what I was doing, firsthand, and saw me go from not being able to walk or to run when we were going running, quote unquote running. I was only able to run for a gosh, I don't even know if I could run a quarter of a mile. I was dizzy. It was terrible. It was terrible. My body just was not, I was so not used to moving. I was so sedentary. Um, just sitting around drinking my Vela Chardonnay all the time. Um, but it's really been rewarding to know that my actions help motivate other people and help motivate other people to seek help and make positive changes. There's actually somebody that I went to college with who um, saw a post of mine on Facebook and reached out to me and said that she thought she was an alcoholic and needed help. And I was able to step right in, and she says to me, and I know you're listening, I love you, but she says she's so grateful for me. Um, And it's interesting to be on this side of that because I've always been like, I'm so grateful for my boss because my boss like told on me really because I had reached, he wasn't my boss at the time, but I had reached out to him and told him I was an alcoholic and he went to HR for me and all kinds of stuff. And it worked out, but I've always been really grateful for him doing that, opening the door because I was too afraid to open the door. And so he kind of forced the door open and just held it open until I walked through it. And that's pretty cool. And my friend from college, when she says to me, I'm so grateful for you, I think the same as my boss now does, which is it's you're the one who did all the work. Um, in this case, I'm not even near this person who I helped, who I went to college with. So, I get to talk to her. We say our gratefuls to each other, as much as we can. We try to do it daily, but I have epically failed at that lately with her, but she sends them to me. Um, my boss, on the other hand, he was an influence with on me every day. He was somebody who knew. I almost felt like he was my sponsor at times because he knew what was going on, and he could have fooled me that he didn't totally understand the program if he had like read the big book or something. I don't know, but it worked for me to have somebody like right near me. But yeah, I feel like I have been able to help other people just by showing that it's possible, you know? And speaking of work, like I mentioned like I have had, well, I'm not there anymore, but I had people come to my office and say, "Do you mind if I come in and shut the door? I want to talk." And they wanted to talk to me because they trusted me. And I always had a positive attitude. And I may not have the answer, but I can tell you what I would do. I can tell you what self-talk I would have if I was in the same situation as you. And it just was, again, so rewarding to be a source of support and inspiration for other people that were struggling with things. Um, I would always share my experiences with my team, and I always share when I'd have a new staff member, I would share with them that I was a recovering alcoholic. And I really did feel that it led to a more open and supportive team culture. And I didn't always see that outside of my team. I'm not saying my team was the best, but I mean, we were. But um, I like to get vulnerable with people now. And before I got sober, vulnerability to me was crying, letting people see me cry. That's what I thought vulnerability was. That's not what vulnerability is to me now. Vulnerability is sharing my experience, strength, and hope because it means everything to me. It's like opening my heart and letting somebody look at it. And it's possible that somebody could just, when I'm not looking, grab a dagger and just stab it right into my heart when I'm showing it to them. But I do it anyway because, again, just like I was talking about that person who was very controlling in my life, um, I have a solid enough foundation and support network around me that I think if you stuck a dagger in my heart, that I could still recover. Um, So living, I think, happily in recovery, and living inspired by my values and the principles does not mean that everything is perfect. Obviously, I'm complaining all the time. But it means that with the ups and downs that I go through, I stay committed. I show up here whether I want to or not. The only time I don't show up here for a podcast is when I feel like it's not in the best interest of my recovery, my physical well-being. But this authenticity, I think and I hope resonates with other people and creates a ripple effect that hopefully extends far beyond where I can see. Um, by focusing on my own recovery and living a life that's aligned with my values, um, it reminds me that of the old adage. I think that's the first time I've ever said the word adage. I'm not sure. But anyway, that actions speak louder than words. And by being true to ourselves, we can inspire change to those around us. I don't have to try to influence everybody else. I just have to try to live my best life, make healing a priority for me. And I'll naturally radiate positivity and resilience, living authentically is going to be more inspirational to others than anything I could actually say. And being honest when I'm not okay, when I don't feel okay, and showing that vulnerability, showing that it's possible to not be okay and to still bounce back, to seek help, and then you get better. That's what life is. And this recovery that I'm in, I didn't know a year ago or when I had my stroke 3 years ago, that this was going to be a lifelong thing. I didn't know. I had no idea, people. When I had my stroke 3 years ago, I had no idea the severity of it. I ignored it. I tried so hard to just act normal. And I spent 2 years trying to act normal, and I was in pain. And I was uncomfortable, and I wasn't telling anybody the extent of how bad I felt. And I'd made myself so much more broken. I broke myself. And that's not no way to live. Um, and today I'm committed now. I'm more committed than ever to trying to focus on my well-being, live the best version of me that I can. Hopefully I don't have any more versions and I can stay in Rachel version 3.0. But we'll see. I mean, if I've got another version ahead of me, then I'm going to make it through that version too. And I'm going to do my best to try to have positive impact on others while I do it. So thank you for joining me today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.